Hello everyone, welcome to the latest Lunchtime Bites webinar from the ICBE Business Excellence SkillNet. Today our presenter is Carrie Buds from Quacka. Carrie is a qualified and experienced workplace wellness consultant in her company Quacka Wellness. She has a background as a health and wellness professional combined with 10 years plus experience working in the IT sector. Carrie helps companies to maximize the productivity and engagement of their talent while improving retention and reducing stress-related absenteeism. She does this by providing workshops and training programs to empower employees to control their digital environments. Today's topic area, very timely, is overcome distractions when working from home, something I think lots of people can relate to. Over the course of 30 minutes, Carrie will demonstrate a number of practical strategies that can support us to overcome distractions, regain focus, and help us to be indistractable, which is a new word for me. The ground rules for today, Carrie will present for about 20 minutes, finishing up with a 10-minute Q&A. Everyone is muted, but we really do encourage you to supply questions or comments via the chat function, which we will call out at the end of the presentation. If you encounter problems with broadband, please bear with us. This session is being recorded. And without further delay, I'll hand you over to the trust in the hands of Carrie Buds.
Thanks a million, Owen, and welcome everyone to our Indistractable webinar for today. So as Owen mentioned, we're going to look at overcoming distractions when working from home. So the first thing I'm just going to ask you to do is, Owen's going to share a poll there, and I'm going to ask you just to think, after being distracted, how long do you think it takes to get back to concentration? Now in this particular case, maybe you could think about if you're working on a report or a detailed email and you get a phone call, or if you're, again, just typing something on your computer that needs some focus and you get distracted by whatever, it actually doesn't matter what the distraction is. Could you select from those options there? We have 5 minutes, 45 seconds, 40 minutes, 32, 23 minutes, 15 seconds, 30 minutes, 28 seconds, and 45 minutes, 16 seconds. So just thinking from your own experience, how long do you think it'll take? You might already know the answer, but if you just think of experiences you've had, if you don't know the answer already.
No spoilers allowed. There's about 2 or 3 more responses just coming through, and I'll share them. And quite a degree of variance in what people think.
Great. Yeah, so
okay.
it is.
I'll end the poll now and the shared results with you.
Brilliant. Okay, great. So nobody thought it was 30 minutes or more, which is correct. The majority of people thought 14 minutes, 32 seconds. And then it was kind of split, maybe 30%, 20% between the 5 minutes and the 23 minutes. So the answer is actually 23 minutes, 15 seconds. And I think that's important here because we're looking at overcoming distractions. So we need to figure out how we can maximize our focus and our attention when we're actually working. So this study was done in 2008. That number hasn't really changed in the last 10 or 12 years. 23 minutes and 15 seconds is the amount of time it takes to get back to focused work if you're interrupted, regardless of the interruption. We're going to look at some of the distractions in a while, but it actually is regardless of the distraction. So because we're talking about working from home here as well, I just wanted to share some statistics with you. So according to the Corona study that was done by NUIG and DCU, 63% of people have reported working from home, and that was up until the end of April. It's possibly more now, and that's up from 18% in 2018, which was the number recorded by a CSO pilot survey census done in 2018. So that's quite a jump, you know. Even if that figure was higher in 2020, it still wasn't 63%. So it's a brand new scenario for a lot of people. And according to a behaviours and attitudes survey done by Leia Healthcare, 40% of workers are struggling with remote working. Not surprising, because we're obviously not in a standard situation at the moment, but distractions is one of the major things that people are struggling with. So what we'll be looking at in the next 20 minutes, 25 minutes or so, including questions. We're going to take an overview of why specifically people are struggling so much with working from home at the moment, or remote working, or however you want to call it. We're just going to look at some details there. Then we're going to focus on 4 distinct strategies and tools that can help you become indistractable. And the idea here is that they may not all apply to you, but at least one of them should. And we want to look at how you can use one of these tools after you come off the webinar today, and implement them at home or in your workplace, wherever you're working, so that you can become indistractable, or at least reduce the distractions in your working day. And then finally, as Owen mentioned, we'll have time for questions at the end. Okay, so I just found this quote online when I was researching this webinar a few weeks ago, and it was from Winston Churchill, and he said, "You will never reach your destination if you stop and throw rocks at every dog that barks." So I think even though this was, I don't know how many decades ago this quote came from, it's still relevant today. We're still stopping and throwing rocks at every dog that barks, digitally probably, or at home in our working environments, and it's really hard sometimes for us to get to our goal or get to our destination. So I just thought visually this worked really well in kind of understanding where we are at the moment in terms of distraction. So just to give an overview and point one again, why it's such a struggle at the moment working from home. And I just want to, I suppose, frame the situation we're in at the moment. A lot of people, we've been doing this for nearly 3 months now for a lot of people, so it's not new, but it's just to give some, like I said, some framing to it at the moment and why it's such a struggle. We may have gotten over our reactionary kind of point of working from home where we just had to do it and make the switch really quickly. At the moment, we might be trying to say, okay, how can I be as productive as possible? How can I be as focused as possible when working from home? And we're maybe taking more of a proactive approach. So number one, this isn't standard or typical remote working, what we're doing at the moment. Remote working, it's a style of work where you exchange the office location for an alternative work location. At the moment, where a lot of us, or for a lot of people, we're exchanging an office for a probably entirely unsuitable, inefficient and distracting home situation. Be that working at home with your family, caring for a loved one, being unwell. It could be a number of different scenarios, but it's not standard classic remote working. It's something completely different. So we're kind of surviving in a remote working or working from home situation at the moment. As I mentioned, a lot of the time, or up until now, the processes have been mostly reactionary. So many organizations and employees had to move quickly to work from home. So they're using technologies and infrastructures that possibly they've been planning to use at some point, or they were using for a small number of people to work from home, or people to work from home 1 or 2 days a week, but they were not yet scaled to be able to maybe cope ideally with the new situation of everybody working from home. So we were reacting to what happened, and we haven't had the chance to be proactive, whereas now potentially we could be a bit more proactive in how we're actually facilitating working from home. And again, the home is still the home, it's not an office. And as I mentioned in the first point too, a lot of people have childcare, they're taking care of the children from home. They might be taking care of a family member either in the home or nearby. You could be self-isolating, you could be cocooning with others. You might be working while you're unwell because you're self-isolating. You could be in a house share with 4 or 5 other people where your bedroom has become your office, your downtime place. It could be any combination of those situations. So work is happening within the family or home unit, not separately from it. And I think just to focus on those, or just to be aware of those as well, it's that they're probably the main reasons why working from home is such a kind of a difficult situation at the moment. So enough with the doom and gloom and what the situation is at the moment. What can we actually do? So we're going to look at a number of strategies. Like I said, it's going to be 4 strategies in particular here. And number 1 is called productivity management. And this is based on a kind of a prioritization strategy and the Eisenhower matrix, which you might already be familiar with. So the Eisenhower matrix is it's a quadrant of actions you can take, or how to divide up your task list or your actions for the day. This is a combination of that with productivity and reprioritization of the tasks you need to do. Now that we're going to look at the 4 main categorizations for your to-do list. First of all, what I would like to say is that at the moment, for a lot of us, you may have a number of task lists or to-do lists. There could be one for the kids' homeschooling. There could be one for your work. There could be one for taking care of the household chores. There could be one for divvying up, taking care of somebody in your home. There could be a lot. So the idea here is that you combine these task lists and nothing is separate in your day. You don't kind of segregate it out. You just decide what's the most important and most urgent things in your list. So I'm going to go through them. So they're denominated with A, B, C, and D. And that's similar again to the Eisenhower matrix. So the first one, for your categorization. And again, this is to try and help you be as focused and indistractable as possible when you're working off your to-do lists. Number 1 is any actions or tasks or things to do that are important and urgent. So for some examples, and I meant to say as well, I'll be sending around this presentation afterwards. I also have a lot of information in the notes parts of the presentation. So I'll be including those in the presentation in a PDF format when I send them out. So you'll have a lot of resources there as well. So number 1 on your task list are things denoted with an A, important and urgent. So for example, you could have something like a time critical report, something accounting related that needs to be done within a certain time, caring for a sick relative who needs care, that's urgent and important, and not inside within maybe your working list, but it actually is important and urgent in your day. So that's A. So these are the things you kind of put to the top of the pile in your day if you really need to focus, or if your day is broken up into 2-hour chunks of work here and there, what do you really, really need to focus on? What needs to be done and what needs to be done now? So they're important and urgent actions. 2 then is important but not urgent. So examples of this, and again looking at combining our work lists and our life lists as well, it could be exercise. If you haven't managed to be active for a couple of days, it could be, okay, I need to actually get 30 minutes exercise today. It's important, but it may not be urgent. You can maybe wait till the evening time to do it. Your weekly planning, again, it could be important but not urgent. You may already know what you're going to do for Monday, but you may need to plan the rest of your week. You can get your Monday's work done and then plan the rest of the week later in the day. Homework with the kids as well. So again, we're obviously working in different dynamics now. Homework and schoolwork rather is really, really important, but it may not necessarily be urgent. There could be things in your important and urgent list. Taking care of a sick child, for example, that would take priority over getting the schoolwork done. So it's just to bear that in mind as well. This can kind of throw people sometimes and flummox them. Something that's urgent but not important, you might be thinking, what is urgent and not important? An example could be an email or a text from a friend that you need to get back to quickly, but it's not such an important action in your to-do list, but it just needs urgent action. So that's kind of C. Other examples could be somebody might ask you for a recommendation for a job that they're applying for. So it's urgent for them because they might need it within a certain time, but it's not on your high importance list of tasks to do. It could even be something like your neighbour asking you to help to jumpstart a car because they need to get somewhere. It's urgent, but it might not be so important in your daily list of actions. And then we have D, which is neither urgent nor important. Things that might need to get done, but they're not urgent or important. Examples here could be you want to get new runners. Do some online shopping to buy some new runners, for example. It still needs to be done, but it may not be urgent or important. It could be something like unloading the dishwasher. So if you're at home and you've got 2 or 3 kids at home, this could be something that is on your neither urgent nor important list that you could delegate to one of them. So neither urgent nor important actions, if you think first, they could be something that you could delegate to somebody else in the family or in your workplace as well. The reason I keep them in there is because sometimes work can be really tough, or sometimes where you feel like you're chasing your tail a lot, and even to have a list of actions that are not urgent or important can actually help. Just to take the action alleviates anxiety approach. If it takes a couple of minutes just to do something quickly, sometimes that can be useful too, just to have in your list as well. And they still need to get done, they're just not urgent or important at the time. So that's our main categorizations. As I mentioned at the start as well, include all activities and tasks. Things like work obviously is going to be the number one. We're talking about working from home here, but exercise, meal times, playtime, schoolwork, they're all important as well. So it's just to chunk out your list. It could be your categorization or your to-do list could be a family list. It could be an individual list that you include the other things in as well. But it can be really, really useful to just focus your attention and decide what actually needs to get done within your day and the allotted time you have. We only have 12 or 14 hours of daytime in our days. We don't have any more. So it's important we get as much of the important stuff done as we can. Okay, so strategy 2 then, curating digital interactions. I'm a digital wellbeing coach or trainer as well, and something that comes up a lot is how you manage your digital devices and your digital interactions. So we're going to look at a couple of these in terms of kind of 3 categorizations again. I'll share again, there's some additional content in the notes of this slide, so you can look them up afterwards if you find this something that will be relevant for you. And the way I help people to work with these is to think of your digital interactions in 3 separate kind of silos or 3 separate buckets. The first bucket then is digital interactions or connections that you have to have. So for example, you have to have Zoom if you're using that for virtual meetings for work. You may need PM tools like Slack or any of those other technical tools that you might need. It could be a communication platform like email or any other communication platform that you use. You have to have these digital interactions, digital platforms, digital software, whatever you want to call them, for you to get your work done. So they are the most important ones. So if you just even took a piece of paper, if there's something you want to focus on, give yourself 3 columns and write down your have to have list, things you have to be able to work from home and work well from home. The second one then I have is nice to have. These are things that are still important in terms of interacting with people and keeping your close ties, your people who are your close relationship people. to keep you together and connected and communicating as well. So they could be something like a friend's WhatsApp group where you talk about how you're doing schoolwork with your kids, for example. It could be one-to-one family calls where you call a parent or a sibling and you just talk about what's going on. They're really, really nice to have, and they're important to have, but there may not be ones you have to actually get your work done during the day, or to, I suppose, complete your day end to end, if you know what I mean. Then the last one is something that I find is the one that you can probably look to lose a bit, or lose some connections or digital interactions here. And they're your habit to have digital interactions. When I think about these, what I try to get people to think about is things that you have gotten into the habit of having, but you don't actually need, and they're not serving you in your day-to-day life. Examples would be subscribing to a newsletter that's maybe no longer relevant for you, and just not relevant at the moment because of the way you're working. And it just fills up your email inbox. It could be a daily email or a weekly email, but it's just something that kind of can distract you. You've got into the habit of receiving those emails or receiving those updates, but they're not actually serving you. Other things could be things like news updates. If you tend to jump on your phone every time you get a news update or a social media update, they could be other ones. It could be following something on Pinterest because you were thinking about redoing your kitchen, and you're getting these kind of updates every day or every week about new kitchen ideas, but actually that's not on the cards anymore. That's going to be delayed by 6 months. You can unsubscribe to any of these, and I would really say think about what's coming into your email inbox, in particular your social media newsfeed, and what can you kind of manage there that you don't have to have. It's just become a habit to have. Other things could be things like following influencers that are not really serving you. If you find it's actually making you feel worse about yourself or your situation, you know, you can stop following these people. You don't have to completely unfriend them, but you can just stop following them, even for a short period of time. It can be really useful. Another thing I would say that is habit to have, particularly in the situation of working from home, is a 1 hour meeting. We've kind of gotten into the habit. There isn't a particular reason why a meeting needs to be 1 hour. And you can see on Zoom that there's a 45-minute meeting as well. For a lot of people, if you've back-to-back meetings, really, really think about, particularly your standard meetings, your standardized meetings, is there a way that they could be less than an hour, or less than half an hour if they are half an hour, because you're ending up back-to-back in meetings, and it may not be the most useful kind of use of your time. And we're going to look at a little bit of that in a second. But definitely don't take 1 hour meetings as the things you have to have. They're definitely a habit to have. And then when we think about our digital interactions, I'm going to share one page here afterwards with this of tech resources or technical tips, things you can use to make your tech work a bit more for you in terms of this as well. Things like do not disturb, muting WhatsApp groups, using the WhatsApp description so that you avoid too many interactions if you use WhatsApp groups for things like workplace interactions and stuff. Using out of office or autoresponders to help you be focused at work. I'll share all them afterwards, but they would definitely be supporting some of these digital interactions that are not the have-to-haves. Okay, so strategy 3 then, and that is prioritize work communication. So obviously at the moment we're looking at our workplace is our home, and a lot of people are working from home. So communication has never been more important. So we know that communicating online or communicating virtually has a higher brain load. So it's just, we're looking for more cues. If we're in a work meeting, it's not as natural as a face-to-face meeting. So it just could be a heavy load on us. So we're trying to make sure that our communication is maybe as high as possible. It doesn't mean being good and efficient communicator does not mean communicating more, or having a good communication within a team does not mean communicating more. Efficient communication is the key to remote working, and it really means being more efficient with your with how you communicate. So we look at 3 different topics here, and again I have a lot of links and a lot of information in the notes of this slide that I'll share with you afterwards. Consider a working from home team communication policy agreed with your team. So that could be a charter, I've heard people call it as well, that you decide on a number of different things. It could be the length of your standard meetings, like I mentioned. It could be communication expectations. Do people get 5 minutes to talk about each of their projects, or is there a time restriction on that? Who are the required attendees? Are the people in the attendee list who maybe don't need to be there? That could actually just be updated afterwards. It's something you can agree with your team, but I think it's really, really worthwhile, and actually documenting it. There's a template in the notes that I'll share with you afterwards, but having an actual document that will show that all the team members can see and agree on is really, really useful as well. Avoid over communication. So we can kind of, it might be a bit different now, but especially at the start of lockdown, I know a lot of people might have felt they were having lots and lots of meetings. And again, it was reactionary. We may have come to a more comfortable situation now, but avoid over communication where at all possible. And then discuss about best options for you to be clear about your goals, or if you manage a team yourself, how to clarify the goals of the team. There's a lot more information about that underneath in the notes part of this slide as well. But think about, could you do something like a sprint meeting for 10 minutes at the start of every morning to make sure everyone knows what they're doing for the day? Could you use a productivity / Eisenhower matrix as a team task list? Is there something you could do there just so that everyone's clear about what they're going to do, rather than having maybe non-stop meetings? Okay, so I know we're tight on time, so I'm going to get through. We have a minute or two to get through our last strategy.
Carrie, you're not so bad in time. Apologies.
Okay.
I put you in more pressure. We have another 5 to 10 minutes.
Okay, great, no problem. That's brilliant. Yeah, so like I said, anything that I've mentioned here, there's information and links, templates, and that in the notes as well. So that could be really useful too. Strategy 4, then, it's a little different, this one, but I think we can't underestimate the situation that people are in, especially if you're trying to work from home with the family, particularly with kids. They don't understand sometimes the locked door, or the mommy needs to work now for 4 hours and you can't disturb me situation. So that's why I think a family charter could be really, really useful if you are working from home. So this family charter, the elements I have in here, there's 5 elements. They're chronological, but it's also a cycle, so you can cycle through it. If you want more information on this, a colleague that I know, her name is Rachel Meskel, she's actually designed a full family charter. She has some lovely infographics and worksheets that you can use. I have a link to her article that she has on LinkedIn in the notes here as well, so feel free to look it up. But the family charter elements, I'm going to go through each of them. There's 5. And the idea here is that you talk with your family. You talk as a group, like a team meeting or a team group, but you make it very family oriented. And the idea is that you figure out what's the most important thing for the family and for the individuals within the family, and how you can try and work with those and make have a situation that works well for everyone in the family. Now, obviously, this won't work in the discussion point of view if you've got children that are maybe under 3, but as parents, even, you could just talk about your situation, how you can manage it. So number 1 is talk. We might forget sometimes. You might be with your family non-stop at home at the moment, but you may not be talking that much. You might just be chunking out your day into, like, okay, I'll work 6 to 8 a.m. and I'll take the kids from 8 to 10, and you're just handing things over back and forth, but you might actually have the time to talk. So if you take a family meeting, decide what's important for each individual where possible in the group, and then even using that to define what's important for you as a family. What you're struggling with. So if the kids are struggling with schoolwork, give them a platform to talk about that. If you're struggling with longer working days, again, it's another platform to talk about it. Talking about workload and the household tasks, I would put those together. So your household tasks are part of your workload now. There is no segregation. Is there a way that kids can help with that? Can you organize that? So that's number 1, is to talk. Then you agree on decision making. So is there going to be a weekly meeting where you decide, okay, this thing worked, but this other action didn't really work? Who decides on making the decisions, and who can bring it forward to the family? Your family priorities, like I said, and individual priorities, you agree on those. You know, what's most important for the family? Do you need to get outside for 30 minutes as a family to exercise during the day, and what time should that be? When is family time and when is individual time for both the kids and the adults, as I mentioned? And again, it can just be as simple as writing these things down nice and simply. Then plan. So set some ground rules for the family. So regardless of what happens in the day, we always spend 30 minutes going for a walk in the evening. Ground rule number 1. Dad always works between 6 and 8 a.m. With his team, and he's not disturbed. If kids, during meal times, we take 20 minutes to sit down and have a chat during meal times. Those kind of things that are ground rules. Your agenda, your chores for the day, key responsibilities. So who's responsible for what? If you have a 5 or 6 year old, like, their responsibility can be, like I mentioned, unloading the dishwasher. That can be theirs, and they can take ownership of it, but it's to write them down again. And write as well. So a physical copy, don't be afraid to write down or type it up. Get everyone to sign it, even if it's a little squiggle, and put it somewhere visible. So it can be like your charter. It can be quite short and tidy, but put it somewhere visible. It can be a number of places: on the fridge, on the kids' bedroom doors, on the office door, wherever you want to have it. But it can be really, really useful, and everyone it's something you could point to if you're struggling. And then follow it. I would say stick to it as much as possible. Make it as doable as possible. Amend where necessary. And this is where the cycle comes in. If you're struggling with some things, you can go back to the talk element. Allow some flexibility and a process for when it's not followed. So if your daughter isn't unloading the dishwasher like she said she would, what's the process you take for that? So family charter, like I said, I have a link to some more elements there. The last thing I'll say is that just familiarize yourself with the tools that can reduce distractions. I'll share those in a one-pager after this. And if you take nothing else from this workshop, I'd like to focus on just 3 elements. Remember the 23 minutes and 15 seconds it takes to refocus, and maybe let that drive the actions you take and how you decide to actually focus your day so that you don't have as little or as few distractions as possible. Productivity, remember, you can only control the controllables. We're in a very uncontrolling kind of time at the moment. You can only control the controllables and do what you can to control those. And for an action, I would say try and choose one of the strategies or the tools that I'll send out afterwards. Then commit to implementing it for 1 week. So don't try and do everything at once. Take one action, one strategy or one tool and implement it for 1 week and see how it benefits you. And make that your priority for after this webinar. So that's the webinar gone through. Hopefully this will help you to be indistractable, and time to take questions now if we have any on.
Thanks very much. We have about 5 to 10 minutes for the questions. So if people want to add them into the chat, and we can call them out, but there's some questions that have come through already. First, Carrie, thank you very much. That was very practical, which is wonderful, rather than things that you wonder how you're going to implement them. So you've given great guidance there. Can I ask just a question around, is there anything that people can do with the physical surroundings that they now find themselves in? And assuming people are probably working from, if they're lucky, home office. If they're not so lucky, it could be the kitchen table or it could be the sitting room. Is there anything they can do with the physical surroundings to make, you mentioned locking the door, which is a good strategy, and perhaps
yeah.
so not pounding when you're on a Zoom call. But is there anything else you could suggest on the physical surroundings?
Yeah, so I would say number 1, have a boundary, whatever that is, that at a certain time in the evening or a certain time in the morning when you start or a certain time in the evening, that your laptop is shut down and maybe physically put away, especially if you're working in a communal space, because we were talking about that earlier as well, Owen. Like, it's very hard. We can't rely on willpower alone for us to resist the urge to check digital devices for new information. We're hardwired that way. So if the laptop is there kind of looking at you, you won't be able to avoid it just with willpower. So physically put it away when you're finished in the working day. If you're using a shared workspace, like somewhere like that where you said you could be both adults in the family are sharing a kitchen table, maybe try chunk the day up a bit so that you're taking, like I said, 6 to 8 a.m. Someone else is taking the 8 to 10 and you're dividing your work up that way. So you're really clear on your working hours, but that it kind of facilitates the family situation as well. And try and have as decluttered a space as possible. Even if that means just getting a storage box, again, that is under your desk or under the kitchen table where you put things that you might need to have to hand, but that they're not scattered all over the table. You just have somewhere to put them. They would be kind of my three main tips, I think.
And the next question is quite interesting in that it shows my own bias when I think about distractions at work, and it's different for everybody. So a lot of focus on situations where there are a family at home and working around that. What about when you're on your own with no one about during the day? There's the element of boredom that sets in. What is the best way to manage that scenario?
Yeah, so that's an interesting one. That's come up a couple of times in different workshops that I've done. And I was talking to one girl in particular, and she was in a house share, but she was self-isolating as much as possible, waiting for a result from a COVID-19 test. And it was really, really difficult, you know. So if you're focused, if you're able to work and you're focused at home, keep doing what you're doing. But if you're finding it really hard, you're missing the social element, I would say use technology in a way that's supportive. Then make one-to-one phone calls, like I said, make an actual connection with somebody. Zoom and WhatsApp voice calls or video calls with groups can be great, but it's that one-to-one connection sometimes that we're missing. So I would say take time in the day and make it a particular time and have like an actual one-to-one phone call, old school, with the phone to your ear phone call with somebody and chat to them. But when you're changing a habit, you need to be really, really I suppose almost over the top in your planning of it, because it won't just happen by itself. We'll fall back into our own behavior. So say between 1 and half 1 before I have my lunch, I'll make a phone call to somebody on Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays, or every day, whatever it is. Decide on your own the way you want to do it yourself, but really plan it, and do it that way, because I feel for that person, isolation is tough. And isolation for people even who are working from home with other people around, you can still be really isolated. So yeah, an actual phone call at certain times during the day, I would say.
Great. Another one here. I regularly hit a productivity lull around midday. Should I take a long lunch break and maybe go for a walk, or just try to push through the lull?
That's a good one. I would say go with your natural circadian rhythm. So your natural rhythm, the way your body works. There could be a time that maybe you're getting hungry, but you just are at a point where you can't focus anymore. So 12 o'clock sounds pretty reasonable. That's kind of middle of the day, maybe lunchtime, depending on what time you start at. I would suggest not trying to push through. Or what could be really interesting too is maybe do an experiment. Do a couple of days where you push through, see how productive you are, and a couple of days where you actually take a walk and take your lunch and see how productive you are. Whereas if you're really trying to push through it, then yeah, you're fighting your natural bodily instinct. So I would say probably more than likely take a break. Now the break can be 10 minutes. It can literally be 10 minutes, stand and stretch, move around. I would recommend as well not sitting for any longer than an hour, like tops. You need to get up every hour. Even if you're at your desk and doing something, stand up. You don't have to be distracted. You can just stand up, stretch, move for a couple of minutes, because we don't have any natural cues at the moment to move. So maybe a 5 or 10 minute movement break might actually be enough to just switch everything back on to get back after 12. But yeah, I would say maybe to do a little experiment. 3 days one week where you push through, 3 days another week where you take a break and see what feels a bit better.
Right, here's one I think a lot of people will be experiencing. So it can be easy for a workday to increase into the evening because it's easy to open up the laptop, and two, because a feeling that you want to do more because you're working remotely. It's almost that guilt factor of you're working remotely, so you should be
100%.
super productive.
Yeah, so I always think working from home is like having a big handbag. And the women on here are men use handbags. You know, the bigger it is, the more stuff you try and put in it. So the work day, there is no divide. It's the big handbag, and you're trying to fill it up all the time. Definitely, I would say number one, don't feel like you're that working from home is really a perk. Consider that it's just the way you have to manage working from home. Now, you don't have to prove yourself by working longer hours. And also, if you're working with a team and you are working longer hours, two sides here. If you're managing a team and you're working long hours, try and set an example by not sending emails out of office hours. Draft them and have them ready to go first thing in the morning. But if you really want your team to think, okay, I don't need to send emails out of hours, maybe lead by example and don't send yours out of hours, or make it very, very clear that there is no onus to respond to emails that are sent out of hours. If you're a team member, I would say bring it up to say, even ask the question, what's expected of us in terms of communication outside of work time or work outside of work time. That would be specifically if you're in a team situation. But yeah, physically put the laptop away. Physically put it away if you find you're working longer hours in the evening. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one I think we're hearing again and again. Can I ask just the role of food in that, you know, people might be feeling distracted, but are actually hungry. And then is there a role for food in terms of rewarding yourself so that, you know, if I get through this, I can have a treat or I can have...
So I have a background in health and wellness coaching, and I would say avoid, if you can, food as a reward. Just it's probably not the best thing to have in your brain, but I would say if you're coming up to lunchtime, make something that you really, really like and say, okay, if I finish this now, I'll have time to have my lunch, savor my lunch if I get this done a bit more quickly. What I would say as well, if you're hungry, and you're getting that kind of slump around 12 o'clock, have a snack. But make sure that you have something with protein in it. So this is what I would have done in the past with people. If you're having a snack at 11 o'clock, have an apple, but maybe have a small handful of cashew nuts or something like that as well. The protein will help you stay fuller for longer, and you won't get that kind of, you know, if you've ever eaten an apple or a piece of fruit, it's very high in fructose, which is absolutely fine, but it takes about 20 minutes before you're actually hungry again. You build up those acids in your stomach and that kind of thing. So you have protein there to actually keep you going, and you don't get that little kind of sugar jump straight away. So I would say, yeah, snack regularly, and try not to reward yourself with food if you can. Reward yourself maybe with a walk at lunchtime.
Carrie, thanks very much. So that big box of Jaffa cakes I have beside me is probably not the strategy for everything.
I won't say don't, but yeah, maybe not regularly.
Carrie, thank you very much for those insights. Are really, really helpful. If no more questions, I don't want to hold people back from lunch anymore. The video and slides from today will be uploaded to the ICBE site later on, along with the resources that Carrie mentioned. And finally, many thanks to everyone who attended today, and look forward to seeing you at the next Lunchtime Bites. And thank you very much, Carrie Buds from Quacka.
Thanks, Owen. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.